I swear, the sound of that slap still echoes in my skull. Anita stood there, half-dressed, trembling, yelling. "You can't tell me what to do, Fred. I'm not your slave." And before I could even process what was happening, my phone buzzed. A message. From an unknown number. A video. Anita, and Kelvin. My wife. My boss. In Kelvin's living room, the same painting on the wall I helped him hang. I froze, my breath locked in my chest, as Anita lunged forward to snatch the phone from my hand. "Fred, it's not what it looks like," she screamed, tears streaming down her face. But before I could even reply, another message came through. This time a woman's voice note, calm, cold, venomous. "Tell your wife I'll see her soon, woman to woman." That's when I realized, this wasn't just betrayal. This was a setup. And someone out there wanted revenge far worse than I ever could. They say every marriage has warning signs before it collapses. I didn't see mine, until they started screaming at me. It began one night after work. Anita was still awake, sitting on the couch, smiling at her phone like it was telling her the world's funniest joke. When I asked what was so funny, she jumped, like I'd caught her stealing something. "Just a meme," she said, turning her screen away. But I caught a glimpse of a name. Kelvin. That name sat in my head all night like a nail I couldn't pull out. Kelvin wasn't just anybody. He was my boss. A man I respected, trusted. He'd met Anita once at a company retreat, and the way they'd laughed together. I told myself it was innocent. I wanted to believe it was. But a few days later, I found a second toothbrush in the glove compartment of Anita's car. Not new. Used. When I asked, she said it was, for emergencies. Who keeps a toothbrush for emergencies? I laughed it off in front of her, but my hands were shaking when I got back inside. Something wasn't right. Then she started dressing differently, tighter dresses, heels that clicked like gunshots across our floor. "Office dinner," she'd say. But there was no dinner. Her office didn't even host dinners. One night, I called her at 10 p.m., no answer. At midnight, still nothing. At 1 a.m., she walked in smelling like expensive whiskey and a man's cologne I didn't own. "Where the hell were you, Anita?" I asked. She shot me a look that froze me in place. "I'm not a child, Fred. Stop acting like my father." Then she brushed past me, leaving a perfume trail of guilt and defiance. The next morning, Kelvin came into my office with a smirk and said, "Rough night, Fred." How did he know? How could he possibly? That's when the idea hit me. I pretended everything was fine. No confrontation. No accusations. Instead, I started watching. Listening. Her tone on the phone. Her smiles during text messages. And one night, when she said she was going out with the girls, I followed her. She didn't go to any restaurant. She didn't meet any girls. She went to Kelvin's house. Lights off. Curtains drawn. But I saw their silhouettes through the sheer blinds, too close. Too familiar. I didn't need proof anymore. I needed patience. Because whatever was happening in that house, I knew I wouldn't just confront it. I'd destroy it. That Friday night still burns in my memory like a brand. Anita stood in front of the mirror, twisting her body to check herself out in a black satin dress that left almost nothing to the imagination. Her perfume hit me before her words did. "Where are you going dressed like that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She rolled her eyes. "Out with the girls." "Don't start." "The girls?" I repeated. "Lisa moved to Chicago. Tasha's married with a newborn. Which girls, Anita? She turned, snatching her clutch from the dresser. You're paranoid, Fred. That's your problem. You always think the world revolves around your suspicion. My hand tightened around the doorframe. I just want honesty. She gave a bitter laugh. Honesty? You work late every night, barely touch me, and then act like a prison warden when I try to have fun. I took a slow step forward. You call this fun? Dressing like that for a girl's night? Maybe if you were half the man you pretend to be, I wouldn't have to, she snapped. That line cut deeper than I expected. Half the man. Careful, Anita, I said, voice trembling, not with fear, but with something darker. You're crossing a line. She turned fully now, eyes blazing. Or what? You'll hit me? That's all you know how to do, control and sulk like a child. You're pathetic. The sound came before the thought. Slap. Her head jerked to the side, her lipstick smudging against her cheek. Silence swallowed the room. Her eyes widened, not in pain, but in disbelief. You just made the biggest mistake of your life, she whispered. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A video file. I frowned, confused, as I tapped it open. The screen flickered, dim lighting, soft music, muffled laughter. Then my blood froze. Anita. Kelvin. On his couch. The same living room I'd been to 100 times. The same spot he'd once said, "You're like family to me, Fred." I looked up from the phone. Anita's face was pale. Fred, please, it's not. Before she could finish, another message came through. This time, a voice note. A woman's voice. Cold, deliberate, venom wrapped in silk. Tell your wife I'll see her soon, woman to woman. My heart sank. That wasn't Kelvin's mistress. That was his wife. Anita stumbled backward, whispering, "Oh my God, no." She found out. Fred, you don't understand. I stepped closer. Understand what? That you ruined everything. That you risked everything for a man whose wife might just destroy you. Her lips quivered. She said she'd never find out. Kelvin promised. I cut her off. You trusted the wrong person, Anita. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't over. The slap, the lies, the video, they were only the start. Somewhere in that city, a woman I'd never met was preparing a revenge far worse than I could ever imagine. And Anita had just made herself the target. The day after the video leaked, Anita barely spoke a word. She sat by the window, clutching her phone like it was the only thing keeping her alive. Then, around 9:30 p.m., her phone buzzed again. She checked the screen and froze. I could see her pupils shrink. It's her, she whispered. Kelvin's wife. My chest tightened. What does she want? Anita swallowed hard. She said she wants to talk. Just woman to woman. Said she forgave me, and wants to end it peacefully. Her voice trembled on that word, peacefully. I looked at her, searching her face for sense. Anita, that woman doesn't want peace. She sent that video. She wants blood. But Anita shook her head. No, Fred. Maybe she just needs closure. She said she's been in therapy, that she just wants to meet somewhere neutral. Silence. Even the clock on the wall seemed to stop ticking. Then, release, she turned her screen to me. The message was oddly polite, even warm. Let's meet at Golden Palms Lounge tomorrow. Just us. No men, no drama. I want to let this go. For a second, even I wanted to believe it. But something about the tone, too calm, too gentle, felt wrong. The next day, Anita dressed like she was going for a peace treaty, floral gown, hair wrapped, no makeup. Before she left, she turned to me. "If I don't come back soon," she said with a nervous smile, "you'll know she didn't forgive me." I tried to laugh, but it came out dry. At Golden Palms Lounge, the cameras caught her walking in, but not walking out. Her last message to me came at 6:47 p.m. "She seems calm. Maybe I misjudged her." She even ordered me juice. Then, nothing. No response. No calls. By 8 p.m., I was pacing my living room like a madman. By 9, I was calling every hospital in town. By midnight, I drove to the lounge myself, but when I got there, the staff looked confused. "There was no woman's meeting here tonight," the receptionist said. "No reservation under that name." That was when my phone rang, unknown number. I answered, breath shaking. "Fred," a woman's voice said, low and calm. "Tell the police not to bother looking. She's safe, for now." Then the line went dead. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a second. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Anita's phone screen, that last message. She even ordered me juice. Juice. That word haunted me. By morning, I was at Kelvin's office. He looked like hell, red eyes, trembling hands. "Fred," he said, voice cracking, "I swear, I didn't know my wife would." "Shut up." I slammed my fist on his desk so hard that his coffee spilled over. "Where is she?" "I don't know. She disappeared last night too. She left the house before Anita got there. I thought she was going to her mother's." That moment, tension peaks. The realization hit me, both women were missing. I felt my pulse hammering in my ears. "If you're lying to me, Kelvin, I'll make you wish that camera never existed." He looked me dead in the eye. "Fred, she's dangerous. You don't understand. I think she's capable of anything." By noon, I'd traced the last signal from Anita's phone, somewhere near Old Creek Road, an abandoned area on the outskirts of the city. Her phone went dead there. The tension in my gut was unbearable. I drove there, tires screaming against the road, until I reached a derelict building surrounded by tall grass. The door was ajar. Inside, silence. Just the faint hum of a generator somewhere behind the wall. Then release, a faint sound. A phone ringing. Anita's ringtone. I followed it, heart thumping like a war drum, until I reached a dim back room. Her bag was on the floor. Her phone beside it. Screen cracked. Still recording a video. I picked it up with trembling fingers, and froze. On the screen, Anita was tied to a chair. And Kelvin's wife, calm, smiling, holding a glass of juice, sat across from her. "You thought you could take my husband and get away with it? Please, I didn't mean to." "You did. Now drink this. Let's toast to forgiveness." The video cut off. That moment, tension snaps, I felt something inside me break. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was war. By evening, the police were handling it. Meaning, doing nothing. So I made my own plan. I went back to Kelvin. "You want your wife alive?" I asked. "Then you'll help me get mine back." He nodded nervously. But what he didn't know was, I wasn't planning to save anyone. I was planning to destroy them both. The police were polite and useless. They wrote notes, asked questions, made tea. At noon they handed me a card and told me to wait. By 3, I realized waiting would kill Anita faster than anyone else. So I stopped waiting. First move, control the narrative. If Evelyn, Kelvin's wife, wanted a spectacle, she'd get one. But it would be on my terms. I went home and wiped my panic off like a suit I'd worn to the wrong funeral. I dressed like a man who had something to lose. Then I started burning through Kelvin's circle. I knew where Kelvin kept the receipts and the little lies. A man who cheats for sport also cheats in books, inflated invoices, shell vendors, ghost meetings. He'd shown me the files once, laughing about a creative accounting fix. I had eyes now, not as an employee, but as a man whose wife had been turned into bait. I called in favors I never wanted to call in. A woman from accounts who owed me for a favor, a former colleague who liked me enough to dislike Kelvin, a private investigator who ran off the books cleanups. Cash changed hands in envelopes. Names were whispered. I fed them sugar, find me what he's hiding. They smiled and went to work. Within 2 days, I had more than gossip. I had an email trail showing Kelvin approving payments to a consultant that didn't exist. I had phone logs with late-night transfers. I had a screenshot, dated and time-stamped, of Kelvin texting a vendor about moving the surplus to cover payroll. The man who'd smiled at me across conference tables had a sloppy tale of money problems. But money alone doesn't break a man's world. Reputation does. So I added reputation. I started small, anonymous tips to a journalist who'd been sniffing financial stories, a quiet message to a compliance officer at Kelvin's firm with a link and a note, look closer. I watched from the small, clean window of my car as the first internal audit email went out. Meanwhile, I needed leverage that would make Evelyn crack her plan wide open without touching Anita. I couldn't let her savage my wife, not while I still had breath. I set a second line of attack, secrets Evelyn thought were buried. Evelyn had pride. She'd spent years making the house look like an Instagram life, masking a temper that fizzed at the edges. She kept receipts for expensive jewelry, a second credit line in her maiden name, a voicemail she thought she'd deleted in which she bragged about teaching a lesson. People keep proof of themselves when they get drunk on fury. I had the PI shadow Evelyn for 3 days. He trailed her to a rented storage unit, where she met a man I didn't recognize, an ex-con who signed for packages in cash. He waved a stack of DVDs at her and joked about materials for therapy. She laughed like she'd found a weapon, not darkness. I stitched it together, Kelvin's money problems, Evelyn's hired hands, Anita's panic, my silence. Then I made one move that would begin to force them into one another's orbit. I leaked the financial tip to Kelvin's compliance team, but with a twist. I sent it as if from Evelyn herself. I created an email draft from a throwaway I controlled, wrote the note in a voice I'd heard her use, and attached the receipts that tied back to Kelvin's ghost invoices. It read like a concerned spouse reporting irregularities. The reaction was instantaneous. HR opened an inquiry on Kelvin. Board members whispered. A compliance meeting was scheduled for the next morning. Kelvin called me late that night, his voice small and sharp. Fred, I swear, I don't know how this happened. Evelyn must be trying to. I don't know. He sounded like a man drowning in 2 currents at once, the legal and the personal. I let him drown. But I didn't stop at his job. I needed them to feel the humiliation slowly, intimately. I bought a private mailbox and sent Evelyn an anonymous package, a framed photo of Kelvin and Anita from Kelvin's living room, taken from a corner, cropped close. No message. Just the image. I had it delivered the way thieves place broken glass on a porch, silent, obvious, terrifying. She opened it at midnight and called Kelvin like a siren. I listened from the car outside. I heard shouting, then muffled furniture noise. For a second I allowed myself a taste of the chaos, not to enjoy it, but to savor the efficiency. The next day, the audit team came to Kelvin's office with documents and demands. I watched Kelvin's face drain as they asked him to log into systems, to explain transfers. I watched the colleagues who had nodded to his jokes retreat like people watching a sinking ship. Simultaneously, I fed the journalist a second piece, the audio of Evelyn's voice note she'd sent to Anita. A woman's promise of a woman-to-woman meeting, with a cadence only a vengeful person would have. The journalist's editor loved the human angle. The next morning the first headline looped across my feed, "Office Affair, Family Fallout." My name was not there, but the web of accusation tightened nonetheless. They began to look for scapegoats. Kelvin looked like one. Evelyn looked like the architect. And Anita? She looked like the transgressor caught in the crossfire. I called Anita's number once, just to hear her voice. It was hollow, like someone repeating a script they didn't believe in. I knew the law would take its time. I knew collateral damage would happen. I also knew the one thing that balanced the ledger, patience. So I waited. I let them make their moves. Each mistake they committed fed the next piece of evidence I needed. Each panic-filled phone call, each angry text, every attempt to scramble and cover only left fingerprints. And then, late one Friday, Kelvin's office sent out suspension notices. He was escorted out by security. Evelyn sent me a message, not to beg, but to threaten. She knew someone had started the machinery. She didn't know the face behind the wheel. I sat alone that night and let the two threads tighten, Kelvin in disgrace, Evelyn frantic, Anita somewhere between terror and shame. It wasn't joyous. It wasn't empty. It felt like something older, a man who had been pushed to the edge finding his footing. I had gutted their safety net. The next move would be the last, the one that would make sure none of them climbed back. They say the last move is always the hardest. I thought it would be throwing the match that burned their world down. I was wrong. The hardest move was watching the flames do exactly what I'd planned and feeling nothing but a cold, hollow satisfaction that tasted like ash. I had built the scaffolding, Kelvin's ledger in tatters, Evelyn frantic and sloppy, Anita isolated and terrified. But I still needed the one thing that would turn suspicion into charges. Proof that Evelyn didn't just humiliate my wife, she'd kidnapped and tortured her. Proof the DA couldn't set aside. The video from the abandoned building was the keystone. When I'd found Anita's phone in that back room, it had been recording, a shaky, terrified stream of Anita's face and Evelyn's calm voice. I'd held it like a smoking gun, hands steady for the first time in days. I made 3 copies, burned them to separate drives, and, this part felt savage even now, I edited one version to thread the evidence cleanly, timestamps, geolocation, Evelyn's voice, and the angle of the camera that matched the storage unit's layout. I walked into Mara's office with the drives in my pocket and a suit that felt heavier than armor. She didn't flinch when I placed the evidence on her desk. She simply set a meeting with the DA and told me to leave everything to her until the arrests were made. No theatrics, she said. We let the law look theatrical. The day the warrants were served, I waited in my car 2 blocks away and watched the scene unfurl. Black SUVs, officers moving in a practiced rhythm. Evelyn opening her door in slippers, hair in a messy bun, eyes still red from nights of crying. She didn't get far before hands were on her shoulders and she was cuffed. She protested, of course, a practiced, outraged woman who kept repeating she'd only wanted justice. The irony wasn't lost on anyone who'd seen her footage. Kelvin's fall came next. The board had the paper trail Fred had fed them, auditors had the invoices, his bank had identified transfers. They didn't call it revenge. They called it corporate housekeeping. But I watched him escorted out, suit rumpled, color gone from his face. The look he gave me across the lobby, half accusation, half astonishment, felt like a benediction. He had lost everything, his job, his reputation, maybe his marriage. Anita was whisked to an emergency unit a day after Evelyn's arrest. She'd been released from that room where I'd last seen the video recording and was finally found by a patrol that the warrant had forced to push deeper into Evelyn's network. She'd been cut, bruised, exhausted, alive in a way that frightened me. She stared at me the first time I sat by her hospital bed, and I saw shame and relief and a terror I could no longer soothe. "Fred," she said, voice raw like paper. "I'm sorry." Sorry felt hollow. It's the first word people use when they can't name the theft they committed. What I felt instead was something complicated, anger, yes, but more a calculation about cost. She had chosen a danger for herself and for us. She had chosen to pull at threads she'd never understood. I had chosen to pull harder. The DA moved like a machine after that. Evelyn faced charges for kidnapping, assault, and conspiracy. Kelvin was indicted for embezzlement and several counts related to the fabricated invoices and misappropriations I'd exposed. Anita? There were no criminal charges for infidelity, but the court of public opinion is merciless. Her name lived in headlines and office gossip like a brand. When the trial began, I sat in the gallery like a man watching his life run through a film projector. Prosecutors laid out evidence in clinical, uncompromising detail: phone records, transfers, the video in which Evelyn's voice, flat and certain, explained her intention to teach that woman a lesson. The footage played. The room tilted for me. There was Anita's face on the screen, bruised, cornered, and beside it, Evelyn's composed mouth reciting lines that would undo her. Evelyn was convicted. The judge's sentence was severe but steady. 10 years, a number that sounded like a punctuation mark at the end of a sentence no one wanted to read. Kelvin's penalties were heavy too: loss of professional license, restitution, the slow social death of a man everyone once nodded to. They both fell in different ways, under different laws, but both felt the same collapse. Anita's life, meanwhile, unraveled in a quieter, meaner way. Colleagues unfriended her. Friends became visitors no more. She moved out of our home with a duffel and a face that seemed older than the years should allow. People asked me what I felt when the gavel fell. They wanted the catharsis, the moment of triumphant satisfaction. I told them, honestly, that it was quieter than they thought. There was no celebration. There was only a long, slow exhale that left a hollowness inside me like an old wound reopened. At night, the apartment felt like a stage after the play had ended, chairs pushed back, the props put away. I'd wake up sometimes and reach for a body that wasn't there, for a laugh that no longer sounded in my rooms. I had won what I thought I wanted: justice, exposure, the right answers. But the price was paid in ways a ledger can't list. Months later, I ran into Anita by chance outside a clinic where she was volunteering. She looked smaller than in the hospital, thinner, cautious, but her eyes had a new steadiness. We said hello. I asked if she was okay. She laughed, a short, surprised sound. "Am I okay?" she said. "Fred, none of us are okay. But we're all still breathing." I thought about telling her the truth. That I'd made choices that turned our private mess into public ruin. That I'd traded intimacy for control. That maybe, in my hunger for retribution, I'd carved away parts of myself that would never grow back. I wanted to say I was sorry too. For the ways I'd sat quiet while things rotted, for the times I'd let pride stand where love should have. But the words would have felt like bandages on an open wound. So I said nothing. We stood there for a moment, two people who had survived a war of our own making, and then went our separate ways. There are mornings now when I wake and the apartment is filled with light, and I pretend the noise outside is the kind that can ease what's left inside. I work. I answer the phone. I care for the house I kept. I don't pretend to be a hero or a villain. I am a man who saw his world dismantled and then dismantled it back to order on his own terms. If there's a lesson in all of this, it's not the one people tweet about, not about vengeance or justice. It's this: we are fragile in ways we cannot predict, and the choices we make to protect ourselves can become the very things that hollow us out. I got what I wanted, in a way. I got the truth. I got accountability. I also got an emptiness no courtroom could fill. I learned, the hard way, that winning a war can sometimes mean losing the peace you hoped would follow. When the dust finally settled, I discovered that revenge keeps a ledger, but life keeps the receipts, and no matter how exact the accounting, some losses never, truly, balance.